As people might always say across any generation, we are facing turbulent times. At heart, nothing is as turbulent or chaotic as it seems if people are truly being themselves. But I want to make something clear that crosses any time in history. All of the chaos and troubles we've studied as a society can be solved as long as people are truly being who they are. I don't like to be topical, but as I mentioned our current president, Donald Trump, that what I'm about to outline in this dialogue has nothing necessarily specifically to do with him because it is relatable to anyone. However, at this point in United States history, it's important to mention the impact President Trump has on our current society. In order for things to truly change, we must not act as though that those of us with more right ideas would truly be right either. The real problem of what's going on with politics is a lot of people in politics are not there for the right reasons. You can tell when people in politics enjoy wanting to make the United States better and that they try to do so. However, even those politicians, if they don't realize it, have to realize that the best way to make the United States better is to understand that all of the history and founding documents tied to the United States was what was happening at that time. And it's not necessarily pertinent to today. We have to remember that at the time the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the earliest foundings of the colonies, that in those moments, they had to do what they had to do. It was in that moment, in those moments, that they had to make decisions based on what they were going to do with their current society. And when the colonists arrived, there wasn't a White House or Capitol Hill. It all had to be created. The reality is that we are always creating our society. We cannot act as though that what worked then should or would work now. What the colonists strove for was to be independent from a monarchy where you couldn't elect a candidate chosen by the people. As far as President Trump, I do not personally care that he speaks colloquially. I do not agree with his beliefs and attitudes, but I have no problem with an elected official speaking more colloquially, which is one reason Donald Trump is president. People want someone who sounds like an everyday person. The politicians who spend their time doing more good and at least trying need to also just be relaxed in how they talk as well. A lot of the reason the Democrats and those who lean the other way from President Trump can't believe how he does things is not only because of the obvious neglect to respectively carry out the duties as president, but because politicians spend so much time creating an image of what being a politician should look like instead of just being themselves. I do not feel President Trump is being himself. I feel he is just using the presidency to further his own personal agenda, and while people pretend to agree with him, they are using Trump's influence to try and get what they want. When a government is set up to truly benefit its citizens, these behaviors don't happen because when people are given the chance to be who they are, they don't feel they need to fuck people over constantly for their own gain. Ego ceases to exist when you're truly who you are. 15 minutes before the first European settlers came ashore, the land that became the United States was already there, and it was already occupied. We have created this illusion that we must uphold these values that we've created so long ago, when at that time, the settlers created all these ideas for a future democracy with nothing that we have today. It's all human doing, and it all happened in the moment where the colonists realized it or not. And that's what we have to do now. We cannot put too much emphasis on upholding the literal documents, nor act as though we must carry the story of the United States founding as though we are unable to make any changes now. If we don't, we will continue to have people similar to Donald Trump be elected, as well as creating unnecessary global conflict. We can certainly appreciate what the colonists did, and how they created the most free type of government system that is intended to be fair to all of its citizens. But let's not also forget that countless Native American, African American, Asian American, Mexican American, and all of the immigrants whose lives were lost for absolutely no reason, not to mention the obvious enslavement of those people, who are truly the ones that literally built the country. The best thing the government can do now, as its number one priority, is to consistently, on an every-minute basis, ensure that all United States citizens, as well as those who have immigrated and are becoming citizens, plus, let's not forget the idea of the United States was thought of by immigrants. The best thing the government can do now is to say that each person is an individual, and that you must do your best to understand who and what you are, the one or many things you truly are, as best you can at this moment, and the government is going to do all it can to provide the resources possible so each person can carry that out. If the government does this for everyone, there is no real problem for us to create amongst one another, because all political battles are about trying to sway one side or the other to understand that this is what's best. You gotta understand that. Well, nobody is ever going to change anybody. So this kind of crap has to decrease significantly if the United States is truly going to progress. Every person in the entire world is something or many things, and that thing or things is never rooted in what we've defined as evil. The problem is, we don't have anything set up for society as a whole to properly nurture it. The United States government has to become this way in order to truly continue as a land of true freedom. There are many people out there working jobs just to work jobs who at heart want to do one thing or many things. And if the government's attitude is, we support the true nature of our citizens, and will provide as many resources as we can give to continue this idea, then not only do you have one of the most relaxed, fun, and productive countries in the world, you have people who actually are doing what they feel they're meant to do. The reason the government has to uphold this mindset is because if you're going to uphold the idea of the United States, you have to fucking unite your citizens, not separate, segregate, manipulate, swindle, or screw them over. The people that don't have a fighting chance because they don't have the resources to do anything. They're just struggling to have shelter and food. The idea that the government should be a government where its constant number one priority is to provide its citizens with all resources possible to be themselves is something that goes beyond whether you are a Democrat or Republican. Those are just words and ideas. We have to go beyond that to build a better nation. If the government does what I've outlined, you have every person contributing in a positive way. That alone greatly reduces the stress of not just the government and the citizens, but eventually the whole world. I feel that even if Hillary Clinton was president, that yes, she would have more sense on how to do the job. But even former President Barack Obama was upholding the values the colonists built, much like all the politicians. Republicans do the same thing, just in their own way, which is fine. But it's two sides to the same coin, no matter if you're Democrat or Republican, or any political affiliation. You have to go beyond that, which is why the idea that the government provides as many resources as possible for its citizens to truly be who and what they are is beyond whatever political party you're affiliated with. Think about it this way, and this is just one example. If the government was set up as I've described, it would provide adequate resources for small business owners to effectively run their business. The government would provide resources such as guaranteed buildings to have these businesses, as well as fair tax rules and fair wages. The basics would be provided. The government is not responsible for how the individual handles their business, nor is the government responsible for the success or failure of that business. It is up to the individual at that point. The government has to provide the basics. Providing the basics does not imply cheap, not at all. Besides, if the government operated in this fashion, people wouldn't be compelled to purposefully be cheap. It's just not in our true nature. Some people's true nature is to not be wealthy. It's just to do what they feel is them and to live comfortably without feeling like they're scraping by. Unfortunately, the view of money in the United States has become out of whack, and at the heart of it, money doesn't really exist. It's an idea that humans created. The intent is that instead of unfair trading, say I'll trade you a paperclip for a cow, we have a system in place that determines the value of things, so that unfair trading doesn't happen. Except that the value of what things are is unfair anyway. And the reason this happens is because the people that are in charge of determining these values, somebody's doing it, is that they have to realize that humans have created money, and there is no such thing as money. It's just become a status symbol. The heart of money is still trading anyway. And if the government acts in the way I've described, you've greatly reduced the mindset of money. And the wealth is spread evenly to provide the basic things. And individuals who want more money, who want to try and earn more money, that is up to them to decide if that is who they are. And if it is who they are not, there is still enough resources, supplies, and everything available to the citizens of the United States. The opportunity for people to become wealthy is still there, because if it is an individual's true nature to become wealthy, then one can't help but do that. But it happens with positive intent. Whether or not it might be President Trump's true nature to be rich, I feel that right now his way of doing things is about getting attention, and my opinion is that he puts that before how he considers it affects the United States citizens, including the people that voted for him. One's true nature does not allow such things to be carried out to these extremes. But if you have a government set up like what I've described, the way in which society operates would be completely different. And as of right now, we don't know what that looks like in this world because we're not living in it yet. But there isn't any reason we can't.